If it bleeds, we can kill it. On this day, 1987, Predator opens in theaters. And a hearty welcome to one and all. This is episode 213 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your, hopefully, happy hump day with me here in New York. We're going to skip past all that promotional BS again and get right into the episode. Today is the 37th anniversary of the release date of yet another Gen X standard, a great movie, an all-timer that spawned a franchise and connected with another sci-fi franchise. That would be John McTiernan's magnificent 1987, mistakenly called an action film. It's actually a horror film, but we'll get to that. Predator, starring prime Mr. Olympia, the man from Graz, Austria, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He gives a tremendous performance in this movie. It's just totally fantastic. But Predator is a film that is way more. The quote that I would like to use is, there's more going on than it seems. And there is more movie there than audiences of the day think they got. It was marketed as an action film. It was marketed as another testosterone, blood-soaked Arnold Schwarzenegger, even from that era, actioner. He had done Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer. He did the first Terminator, sci-fi, but a lot of dead bodies and, body count. Then he did Commando. I ate Green Berets for breakfast. Then he did Raw Deal. He was just knocking out these heavy action movies one after another. He was killing a shit ton of people. And so Predator was marketed in that ballpark, that this is another actioner, but it's going to be better. You got a big cast, Apollo Creed, and a filmmaker in John McTiernan who had done a movie the previous year with Pierce Brosnan called Nomads, which is not really that good, but it showed that he was a director of significant talent and a force to be reckoned with. And for fans of the movie Die Hard, if you remember that incredible shot where it really appears as if Hans Gruber, a.k.a. Severus Snape, a.k.a. Alan Rickman, Hans Gruber, is falling from Nakatomi Plaza. There's a moment in Nomads where the exact same shot was used. So McTiernan had figured that out before he did it in Die Hard. But the movie Predator, given the pedigree, given the budget, Joel Silver, who later would do The Matrix, he did Lethal Weapon in the same year. Joel Silver, who famously said, "I don't make art, I buy it." I could live 100 lifetimes and never come up with a quote as brilliant as "I don't make art, I buy it." But he actually was selling himself short, because Predator is great art. And I would argue that Lethal Weapon is great art. And The Matrix, which he also was part of the production team, is great art. So Joel I don't think he was trying to undercut himself. I think he thought that was a flex, but he was undercutting himself. He was responsible for some great art. But given the pedigree, Lawrence Gordon, Joel Silver, John Davis, those are three big hitters that produced Predator. And you had Arnold, who was rising. He was 39 when this movie was shot. He got married to Maria Shriver during filming. I remember being a kid in 6th grade and seeing pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger's wedding. Now, I knew who he was. I knew he was a bodybuilder, Mr. Olympia. I had seen the Terminator. But what bothered me about the wedding pictures is that he had a crew cut. I remember thinking to myself, why would he get a crew cut to get married? What? And also, when you're a 12-year-old kid in 1986, and people say, he's marrying into the Kennedy family. He's marrying someone named Shriver. What? So I didn't ask the appropriate questions, and I didn't have any way to understand Maria Shriver's father, Sergeant Shriver, the man who started the Peace Corps. Might have started the Job Corps too. He was married to Eunice Kennedy. There you go. That's the Kennedy connection. That's how Arnold married into it. Eunice Kennedy, who did not have a particularly good end, but that's how he married into it. Sergeant Shriver, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, Maria Shriver. But yeah, Arnold had a crew cut because he was filming Predator. And so Predator came out June of 1987, and it was a hit. It was not as big a hit as you would have thought. It made just about $100 million at the box office. But it is a film that gained enormous traction on VHS, on a cable like HBO. And I don't want to say it built a cult following because it's not really true. It was a hit. It built a devoted following of actual fans who maybe missed it in theaters and wish they hadn't. But it was marketed as a straightforward blood and guts action movie. And there was so much more going on in the movie Predator than that. But, and here's the great part about being a film theoretician, a guy who studied all of this stuff, you don't have to get into all of the other, you can take it as an action movie. I can tell you it's a horror film and I can explain why, but it doesn't matter if you see it as an action film. Anybody who acts as if genre is absolute, they're full of shit. It's not. Just as anybody who would say film noir is a genre, no, it's not, it's a style. Don't tell me that. But it was marketed as a straightforward action movie. It was not marketed as a horror film. But when you think about Predator, you got a bunch of guys. It's a 10 Little Indians story, right? You have a bunch of guys in the, well, not really in the woods, they're in the jungle. They're on what's supposed to be a diplomatic mission. There's more going on than Arnold is told. The character of Dylan, Carl Weathers' character, kind of withholds information that probably would have been useful, doesn't tell them, and they're dropped into, as Arnold puts it, a meat grinder, and they start getting bumped off. Now, right there, that's the setup for the dead teenager movie of your choice. In Predator, they don't do the part where they go skinny dipping after 3 of their friends have been murdered. They skip over that. They don't do that. But it follows the form of the horror film. Predator, in the film, played really well by Kevin Peter Hall. It was supposed to be Jean-Claude Van Damme, but there were issues with the suit, and they just decided to get a guy who was very tall in Kevin Peter Hall. But there's a great picture of a very young, and this is even before Bloodsport, Jean-Claude Van Damme standing with Carl Weathers during filming. It was probably the filming of the scene where, well, no spoilers, but it was probably during filming of a late scene involving Carl Weathers and the Predator. But the two of them seem to be having a good time. Carl's smiling, and and Van Damme's wearing glasses. But that was the original iteration. But the movie follows the form of a horror film. There's no final girl, but Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's the final guy. Now, when I say it's a horror movie, this is not just out of thin air. Now, I mentioned this on a previous podcast, but in case you missed it, it's very important if you love movies. A classic horror film, as defined by the film theoretician Noel Carroll, no relation to Noel Coward, Noel Carroll, in his really fascinating book on horror called, not surprisingly, The Philosophy of Horror, Noel Carroll lays out 4 stages. He calls it the complex discovery plot. He says all classic horror movies, and when I say classic, it doesn't necessarily have to be a good movie. I can name you a ton of really shitty horror movies that follow what I'm about to say. But this will show you that John McTiernan, there was very little in this movie, Predator, that was accidental. He was making a horror movie, whether or not he told anybody he was making a horror movie. The complex discovery plot in a horror movie, very simple. Stage 1, onset. Stage 2, discovery. Stage 3, confirmation. Stage 4, confrontation. In Predator, onset. Well, the onset is our intrepid heroes, led by Arnold as Major Dutch Schaefer, Apollo Creed himself, Carl Weathers as Al Dillon, kind of a CIA guy. He used to be a soldier like Arnold. Future governor. Imagine an action movie with two future governors of the United States. You had Governor Arnold, California, and Governor Jesse the Body Ventura, Minnesota, 10 years or so after Predator. And a whole bunch of other terrific character actors like Richard Chaves and Sonny Landham and the amazing Bill Duke, who also became a filmmaker. He made a movie, Deep Cover, in the early 90s with Lawrence Fishburne and Jeff Goldblum. Very, very good. Bill Duke was in Action Jackson the next year with Carl Weathers. So these guys show up and they're in this absurd situation, and then Arnold realizes that his old buddy Dylan, you son of a bitch. And then the meme that every one of you have seen, that everyone has seen, and many people, especially if they're younger, don't know that it's from this movie. The air arm wrestle between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers. And by any normal human being metric, the Carl Weathers of Predator, he is fucking jacked. He is jacked. But standing next to the Austrian oak, guy looked like he never touched a weight in his life. As we used to joke at Bev's gym, anytime you saw somebody who was, 18-inch arms against, and he's standing next to Dorian Yates with 24-inch arms, this guy looks like he never touched a weight in his life. Ronnie Coleman, the famous deadlifter, Ronnie Coleman deadlifting 800 pounds. He has a training partner whose arms have got to be at least 19 inches. Standing next to Ronnie, we were joking around. We all said, this guy looks like he never touched a weight in his life. And obviously, we're being facetious. But Carl Weathers is huge, and he's half the size of the Austrian oak. Yeah, that's what she said, right. But they go to this location, this drop point in the middle of the fucking jungle, and there's a diplomat that's being held hostage, and there's another diplomat, and then there is some really weird shit that takes place after this attempted rescue that kind of goes awry, and they kill a whole lot of people. They see some of their own soldiers, or Arnold recognizes that the dog tag, you can't recognize the guy because he's been skinned. But he sees something that can't be real, that we know is not of this earth. They don't know that yet, but they know that there is something going on that they didn't sign up for. Then, one of their number, Hawkins, played by, speaking of Joel Silver, Shane Black, who had just written Lethal Weapon, he got cast in Predator because Joel Silver, he liked his look, and he had some acting experience. He was funny. He had a way with a wisecrack. So he cast him as Hawkins in Predator. Lethal Weapon only came out about 4 months before Predator. It came out March 6th. It's pathetic, I know that. But the reason why I know why Predator was released March 6, 1987, Lethal Weapon, March 6, 1987, same release date as Angel Heart, my all-time favorite horror movie. Well, that's more pure horror. That's closer to pure horror than Predator. But the character of Hawkins, spoiler alert, 37 years on, the character of Hawkins played really brilliantly by Shane Black. He hasn't done much acting other than that, but he's terrific in the movie with the jokes that he tells. When they discover Hawkins' mangled body, which they don't discover, when they find all the blood and the girl that they're with, Elpidia Carrillo's character of, I don't remember her name, I guess her name's Anna, that's onset. That's stage 1 of the classic horror film. Something sinister is afoot. What's going on? Onset. Discovery, they don't discover Hawkins' body, but they discover that something, maybe not of this earth, is here. Most of the guys don't really believe that, but the woman knows. She knows that it's something not of this earth as soon as she sees Hawkins get killed. Spoiler alert, sorry. She talks about it later in the movie, but we don't know all of that information at the time. But that is discovery. And then, more spoilers, other guys start to get bumped off. That's the first two stages of a classic horror film that this movie fulfills. Now, I saw it when I was 14. I rented it. I thought it was an action movie. It wasn't until NYU Film School when I read this book. I said, son of a bitch. They didn't even attempt to market this as a horror film. Now, the third stage of a classic horror film is called confirmation. It doesn't just mean that you're confirming dead people. We've done that already. They knew Hawkins was dead. They know Blaine is dead. Spoiler alert, that's Jesse Ventura's character. They know. That's not confirmation. Confirmation comes in the form of one person in the principal cast who doesn't believe that there's a monster. In this case, an alien from another planet. The guys are all convinced. Sonny Landham as Billy is convinced very early. He figures out, without saying it, nothing alive could have survived. I can't find tracks here. There have to be tracks here. There are no tracks here. There's something out there waiting for us, and it ain't no man. Carl Weathers' character of Al Dillon, who is presented briefly as a somewhat antagonistic force because he is now a CIA guy. What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils? He's now a CIA guy he's the one who's responsible for the fix that they're in, and he didn't give them all of the information. He kind of fucked them over. But he's there too, so he screwed himself over also. But he does not accept that there is anything supernatural going on. He believes that there is a plausible explanation, or as he says it, there's a couple of guys running around out there and we got to take them down. Now, about a month and a half ago, I sat right here after watching a pure classic horror movie, which I think is a great horror movie, Late Night with the Devil. Now, if you've seen that film and you've seen Predator, the character of Carmichael, played so beautifully by Ian Bliss, famously played Bane in the Matrix movies. He got to do a Hugo Weaving Smith impersonation in the second and third films. But in Late Night with the Devil, that character is the dissenting voice. As Al Dillon, Carl Weathers in Predator is the dissenting voice. He thinks everybody is going loco because it's 115 degrees. They're probably going to die anyway. They're in the middle of the fucking jungle. There's a couple of guys running around. He can't accept. There's no fucking aliens. What's wrong with you guys? Well, Dutch Schaefer doesn't believe in aliens either, but you know, in the immortal words of George Clooney and From Dusk Till Dawn, I don't believe in fucking vampires, but that's what we're dealing with. I didn't believe in aliens, but here we are. And unfortunately, the confirmation phase does not complete until Carl Weathers realizes that there is an alien. He comes face to face with the alien. Well, no shit. Obviously, this is not a regular guy. This is somebody in a cloaked suit who, given the limitations of the horror movie and the fact that Arnold has to be the last person standing, Arnold is the final girl, I'm probably going to go the way of Apollo Creed in Rocky IV and not make it out of this film alive. Too bad. So sad. The final stage of a classic horror film is confrontation. And this is where, because it's Arnold and not the final girl at the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or even Laurie Strode in Halloween, or any of the other movies. Hell, Helen Lyle in Candyman. Because it's Arnold, they're able to do something else. Dutch Schaefer, I will say, and I think most people who have seen all of Arnold's best movies will agree, he is the toughest, strongest, most resourceful non-Terminator character that Arnold Schwarzenegger ever played. Dutch Schaefer has skills that even great soldiers under normal circumstances wouldn't have. He's good at everything. He's able to build traps with very fundamental, rudimentary equipment because he doesn't really have that much on him. But we know that the Predator is stronger, as diesel as Arnold is. in this film. He's got to be 230 and he's still fit. Predator probably has twice his strength, just based on what we know. But the confrontation is Arnold facing down the Predator, and, well, that part I won't spoil if you haven't seen it. But what the movie does is give us what amounts to a very extended, elongated chase sequence, which normally wouldn't work. It would go slack at a certain point, but in this movie it doesn't. Because we know Arnold's not just going to get bumped off and then the film ends. We know there's going to be more than that. But we don't understand how could he possibly defeat a technologically superior, bigger, fully armed opponent. What the hell can he do? He's just a guy, even though he's 39-year-old, 240-pound Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, maybe he can stab him. You start going through all the permutations, and it turns out that Dutch has the abilities to put together what amounts to like what is it called? A Malacca man trap from the original, the novel, The Most Dangerous Game. He puts together what amounts to a man trap. So it is a horror film in the way that people, when they look at Aliens, James Cameron's sequel, which has a lot of parallels with this. Aliens is an action movie, it's science fiction, and it's a horror film. It's all three. And in the immortal words of Chevy Chase and Spies Like Us, the answer is D, all three. This movie is science fiction, action, and horror. It follows the tenets of sci-fi, we know, and obviously it's an action movie because we got a lot of shit blowing up real good for almost the entire running time. A lot of shit blowing up real good. Doesn't have to be one genre. It can be a lot of different things. But in this movie, all of the principal characters in Predator, we get a good sense of what makes each guy tick. And it's something you don't always see in these kinds of ensemble movies. And unfortunately, in Aliens, a lot of the people get bumped off before they can really develop any personality. Sorry, a little bit of a spoiler alert. It happens. But the other thing, so you didn't know that this was really a horror movie. Did you know that this was a Vietnam War allegory? That this film is basically Vietnam in the guise of what's supposed to be a diplomatic kind of covert military rescue op, but it's actually a story about Vietnam? It is. You have elite soldiers, trained soldiers, on a diplomatic mission, which turns out to not really be what they think it is. They can't see the enemy. The enemy uses camouflage and all kinds of tactics, so it's not a stand up and fight type of thing. It's not a conventional battle. Well, unfortunately, that's the Vietnam War. Our guys never had a chance because it wasn't a conventional war. They weren't fighting a conventional opponent. They were fighting people who used camouflage, who used the trees and their knowledge of the landscape to take our soldiers, to injure them, to wound them, to kill them. That's not an accident. McTiernan knew exactly what he was doing. Now, whether or not the original screenwriters, was it Jim and John Thomas, I think were their names, that I don't know. But this is very clearly. And remember, Vietnam only completely ended a little over 10 years before this film came out. And people back then, I'm sure, were talking about it. I don't think that Roger Ebert mentioned it. Ebert was a fan of the film. The film got good reviews. It was nominated. It should have been nominated for more than one Oscar. It was nominated for Best Visual Effects. I don't know what won that year, but it didn't win. Alan Silvestri's musical score, 100% should have been nominated for Best Musical Score. And I feel like the set design, the production design, how did it not get nominated? Everything in there was top notch. And the camera work, I don't know who the cinematographer was. I feel like it was a big name. It wasn't like a Robert Richardson, but it was a big name. The camera work is incredible. There are some shots, some moments of camera trickery where even someone like me, I still don't understand how McTiernan and his team pulled it off. There's one shot in particular where you have a character in the foreground, he's blurred, and what's in the distance is crystal clear. And then all of a sudden, there is a pullback to the guy, it's actually Richard Chaves as Pancho, right in front of us. and he gazes up. It's one of the single greatest shots that I have ever seen. And you're talking to somebody who studied Citizen Kane, studied Vertigo, who studied Rear Window. And I've never seen a shot like that. I don't know how they even conceived of it in the first place or what they did with the camera to achieve that, but they achieved it. And for those who have seen the film and don't know what I'm talking about, it comes in the first third of the film. But you'll know it when you see it. It's a holy shit, how the fuck did they do that with the camera? Wow. So there's allegorical elements. It's a horror film. But it's a movie of almost nonstop tension and continuous excitement and continuous kineticism, forward motion of the story, of the stakes. And unlike Aliens, what we learn in this film, because there's a monologue, the character of Anna, who's played very well by Elpidia Carrillo. It's kind of a thankless role, but she has a monologue where she pretty much gives away the game that this isn't the first time I've seen this creature or a creature like it. Apparently, whatever this alien race is, I don't remember the name of it. We get into it in the movie Prey, and maybe there's a little bit in Predator 2. But that there has been a creature like this that has come down before to hunt. So the Predator he's not looking for world domination. This is not an extinction level event kind of thing where in the world of the movie Aliens, if you got a couple of those creatures through quarantine, as one of the characters, I won't spoil it, one of the characters in Aliens decides he wants to try to do at a certain point, you could end up with an extinction level event. Because those aliens are so adaptable, it is so easy for them to breed. It is so easy for them to blend in to walls, all of that. We saw it in the movie Aliens. This is a self-contained story. But the forward motion and the sense of, it looks like they're all going to die. How can Arnold defeat this thing? All of this. I would say that this movie has almost no moments that we're not fully engaged. It's not action 100% of the time. There are moments where you pause and somebody, is killed and they try to put together some kind of a defense, some kind of a trap, the first attempt at a trap when they still had a decent number of people to try to lure the Predator in. That's a point in the film where Apollo Creed, aka Carl Weathers' Al Dillon in this film, he still thinks it's a bunch of guys. The rest of the main cast, you're fucking alien, bro. I don't know what you're smoking or not smoking to be unable to accept the reality of your situation. The Predator was a hit, gained a greater following, as I said, on home video and HBO, and they made a sequel. It came out late in 1990, and it starred Danny Glover, Lethal Weapon, Joel Silver. Again, this is not a coincidence. Joel Silver produced that one too, and Danny wanted to get involved. Glover is pretty good in Predator 2. I like his performance. Bill Paxton is also in Predator, the late, great Bill Paxton. And answer to a trivia question, who was the only actor to be killed by a Terminator, the Alien, and the Predator? Bill Paxton in Predator 2. Predator 2 is not a great movie, but Glover's performance is very solid. He plays I think he's Los Angeles. It's slightly futuristic from 1990. I mean, it takes place after 1990. But he is a cop. Clearly, Glover either was given direction or he took it upon himself. He does not want to come across like Roger Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon. He had played that role in 87's Lethal Weapon, and in 1989's fucking great Lethal Weapon 2. I think the sequel's almost as good as the original. He wanted this character to do something different, to be something different, and I think he succeeds. His character in this film is kind of a Lethal Weapon. He's closer to Mel Gibson's Martin Riggs than his own Roger Murtaugh. It's a very cranky, kind of angry performance. And for the world of the film, it works. In the movie, the atmosphere is terrific. I love Gary Busey in the film. Gary Busey, just one of those actors, always entertaining. I forgot he was in this. Yeah, same producer. They put Gary Busey in the movie. Predator 2 is not great, but the Easter egg at the end of the film, mild spoilers, there's a moment where Danny Glover sees an artifact, a Predator artifact, looks suspiciously like the xenomorph from the first two Alien movies. Not a coincidence, but that one moment in Predator 2 opened the door for, video game, Alien vs. Predator, and then the Alien vs. Predator franchise. The movies are all fucking terrible. They're not good. I guess I would have liked if Arnold could have come back, if he could have somehow been in the sequel. But man, Austrian Oak was working like the Dickens back then. And Total Recall, which was his movie that came out, he did two in 1990. That's arguably, even if he had wanted to, it would have been difficult. Kindergarten Cop came out in Christmas season. It was in theaters the same time as Home Alone, for reference. And Total Recall, June of 1990. So Arnold was busy. And I just think they were going to go in a different direction anyway. Arnold, in a sense, had outgrown that if they were going to make a sequel. There is one reference to it. I think it's the Gary Busey character that says something like this happened in the jungles of Costa Rica or wherever the fuck it was a few years back. And that's referencing the events of the first movie, Predator. I saw the one with Adrian Brody, which I think was from 2010. Adrian Brody could make reading the phone book interesting. He's such an incredible actor, but I didn't think that movie was that great. I think it was just called Predators. There was talk there was going to be another one. Maybe Arnold would come back, but that ship has sailed. Certainly it's sailed by now. The first one, though, is a great film. And to me, it is a top 10 greatest action movies ever made. And I don't have it in my top 10 horror films because I myself think of it more as an action movie. It is a horror film which plays like an action movie. Remember the old jokes about Campbell's soup? It's the soup that eats like a meal. Predator is a horror film that plays like an action film. And the science fiction elements, I would never put it in my top 10 sci-fi because there's not that much science in it. It's sci-fi because there's alien technology involved. But Predator is a great movie. It's available on various platforms. You can catch it on Tubi and available for rent on Amazon Prime. I think it might be streaming on Apple Plus, where if you have a subscription. I'm not sure on that. But Tubi is a free app. You got to deal with, commercials every 20 minutes or so, but nothing horrendous. And the film is in its uncut format. They don't have to edit it because of all the violence or anything like that. I was a fan from the first time I saw it. And it is on a very short list of if people, let's say young people, ask the question, I know who Arnold Schwarzenegger is. Arnold's getting up there. Gen Z may just know him as, he's a goofy old guy. We see him in commercials. I think he was once governor and he's a bodybuilder. I know who he is. I haven't seen any Arnold Schwarzenegger films. What do you recommend? Total Recall, Predator, Terminator 2. But Predator is an easy film because it is a one-off. And it doesn't deal with the kind of mind-bending stuff of Total Recall. Predator, just for one movie, is a movie that I would recommend. You want to understand why and how this guy became as big a star? There's your movie. Because his character doesn't engage in any joking around or any goofing around. He plays the material straight. He is sober and serious the whole way through. And it's a great performance. He doesn't get to show the range that he did, hell, even in Terminator 2 or Total Recall, where he gets to play two characters. And he kind of does more emoting in the same year as The Running Man. Definitely does more emoting. But it's a very solid performance. He does what he has to do. He looks great. The whole cast, everybody, it looks ridiculous. Sonny Landon is fucking jacked. And obviously Jesse the Body Ventura wasn't called a body for nothing. He's still sporting, 19 and a half, 20-inch arms. But Predator, one of my favorites, released on this day, 1987, directed by John McTiernan, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers, Jesse Ventura, Shane Black. Richard Shaves, Sonny Landham, and Bill Duke. This has been episode 213 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Wednesday evening here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 214 real soon. Until then, run! Go! Get to the chopper! Peace.